My family mocked me as the bookworm, but I quietly built a $70 million empire. The laughter would echo through our small suburban home every time my family gathered around the dinner table. My older brother Thomas would mimic the way I curled up on the couch with a book, his voice dripping with mockery as he held an imaginary volume in front of his face. "Look at little Emma," he'd sneer, "our very own library rat who thinks she's too good for normal people." My parents would chuckle politely, though their eyes carried that same mixture of amusement and disappointment. Growing up as the youngest in a family of extroverts felt like being the odd piece in a puzzle that refused to fit. While my siblings spent their weekends playing sports or attending social events, I found solace in the quiet corners of our local library. The smell of old paperbacks became my comfort scent, and the characters within those pages became my closest friends. Each book was a portal to worlds far more exciting than the one where I constantly felt out of place. "Emma spends more time reading than living," my mother would often remark to her friends during their coffee mornings, shaking her head with what seemed like equal parts concern and bewilderment. What kind of life is that for a young girl? She should be making friends, going out, experiencing real life instead of burying her nose in books all day. Her words weren't cruel, but they cut deeper than any intentional barb could have. At school, things weren't much better. During recess, while other kids played tag or shared snacks, I would sit under the shade of the old oak tree, devouring yet another novel. The other children called me names: Professor Nobody, Dictionary Girl, Imagination Isolation. Their taunts followed me like shadows, but I learned to tune them out, retreating further into the magical realms between the pages of my books. Each night, after finishing whatever chores were assigned to me, I would sneak into my tiny bedroom and continue reading by the dim light of my bedside lamp. The hours would slip away unnoticed as I journeyed through ancient civilizations, explored distant galaxies, and walked alongside historical figures who changed the world. These stories weren't just entertainment, they were lessons in courage, perseverance, and the power of ideas, qualities that my family couldn't see beyond their teasing remarks. Despite their ridicule, I never stopped reading. In fact, their constant mocking only fueled my determination to prove them wrong. Every book I read added another brick to the fortress I was building around my dreams. I might have been the family bookworm, the weird kid who preferred fictional adventures to real-world interactions, but deep down, I knew there was something special about the knowledge I was accumulating. Something that would one day make them eat their words. In the summer of my 14th year, while my family vacationed at the beach house, I discovered a series of business biographies in a dusty corner of the local library. These weren't the fantasy novels or historical fiction I usually favored, but something about the worn spines and faded titles caught my attention. The first book I picked up was about a woman who had built a billion-dollar company from her kitchen table. As I turned each page, something inside me shifted. For the first time, I saw myself in someone else's story, not as the awkward bookworm, but as a potential architect of change. These business books opened doors to concepts I never knew existed. Marketing strategies, financial planning, consumer psychology, topics that sounded dry and technical in theory came alive through real-world examples and success stories. I began spending my allowance on notebooks, meticulously documenting ideas and observations. Every evening, while my family watched television or played board games, I would sit at the dining table, surrounded by piles of books and papers, connecting dots between different business models and market trends. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was profound. Where once I had simply consumed stories, now I started analyzing them. I noticed patterns in successful businesses, common threads in marketing triumphs, and recurring themes in brand development. My room became a command center of sorts, with charts pinned to walls and color-coded notes scattered across every available surface. I even started tracking local businesses in our town, studying their advertising strategies and customer interactions. The most surprising discovery came when I realized how many of these successful entrepreneurs had faced ridicule and doubt early in their journeys. Some had been told they were wasting their time, others laughed at for pursuing what seemed impossible. Yet they persisted, driven by a vision that others couldn't see. This realization gave me strength. If they could overcome skepticism and build empires, why couldn't I? My newfound passion extended beyond theoretical learning. I started experimenting with small-scale projects, testing theories from the books I read. I organized neighborhood book clubs, charging a small fee for refreshments and discussion guides. I created handmade bookmarks and sold them at school events. Each venture, no matter how small, taught me valuable lessons about pricing, marketing, and customer satisfaction. The money I earned went right back into buying more books and materials, fueling a cycle of learning and practical application. The turning point came during my sophomore year in high school when I stumbled upon a book about digital marketing. At the time, social media was still a relatively new concept, with Facebook having launched just a few years earlier. Most adults dismissed it as a passing fad, but the book's author argued that social platforms would revolutionize how businesses connected with customers. Intrigued, I convinced my parents to let me use their old computer to create a simple blog reviewing young adult novels. Within months, my blog gained traction among fellow book lovers. I started receiving emails from authors asking for reviews and publishers offering advance copies of upcoming releases. I experimented with affiliate marketing, earning small commissions for linking to books on online retailers. What began as a personal project evolved into a modest income stream, validating everything I had been learning about digital entrepreneurship. Despite these achievements, my family remained skeptical. "It's just a phase," my father would say, patting me on the head as if I were still a child playing pretend. "She'll grow out of this business nonsense soon enough," my mother would add, though her tone carried less certainty than before. Even my brother Thomas, who had graduated from college and started working in finance, dismissed my efforts as amateurish. "Running a real business isn't like reading about it in books," he'd scoff during family gatherings. Their doubts only fueled my determination. I expanded my horizons, reading about SEO optimization, content marketing, and digital advertising. I studied case studies of successful online businesses and adapted their strategies to my growing platform. By the time I graduated high school, my blog had transformed into a full-fledged website featuring book reviews, author interviews, and writing resources. The revenue streams diversified too, from sponsored content and advertising to online courses teaching others how to start their own review blogs. During my college years, while pursuing a degree in English literature, much to my family's chagrin, I continued building my digital empire. I invested in proper web hosting, hired freelance writers to contribute content, and developed partnerships with publishing houses. The business grew organically, powered by authentic connections with readers and writers alike. Yet despite clear evidence of success, my family maintained their dismissive attitude. They couldn't comprehend that my bookworm tendencies had evolved into sophisticated business acumen. One particularly memorable Thanksgiving dinner encapsulated their persistent skepticism. As relatives gathered around the table, my uncle asked me what I planned to do after graduation. Before I could respond, my brother interjected with a smirk, "Oh, Emma's building her empire of imaginary businesses from her bedroom." The table erupted in laughter, with my parents joining in uncomfortably. I smiled politely, knowing that my monthly revenue exceeded what most of them earned in a year. This pattern of dismissal continued even as I graduated summa cum laude and declined several lucrative job offers to focus full-time on my growing enterprise. My family attended my graduation ceremony, proudly taking pictures while simultaneously questioning my career choices. "You have such potential," my mother said, handing me my diploma after the ceremony. "Why waste it on this blogging thing when you could be doing something real?" Their inability to recognize the value of my work became a strange source of motivation. Each doubting comment, each condescending smile fueled my resolve to prove them wrong. I expanded into new markets, launched additional websites catering to different niches within the literary world, and began developing educational programs for aspiring writers and reviewers. The business continued to grow, surpassing the $1 million mark in annual revenue by my 24th birthday. Yet at every family gathering, the dynamic remained unchanged. They spoke of my cousin's promotion at a local bank with genuine pride while treating my achievements as some sort of elaborate hobby. When I bought my first property, a beautiful Victorian house that would become both my home and company headquarters, they attributed it to probably some inheritance from your grandparents, rather than acknowledging my business success. The irony wasn't lost on me. While they mocked my bookish ways, those very habits had given me the tools to build something substantial. The analytical skills honed through years of close reading helped me dissect market trends. The storytelling techniques I absorbed from countless novels informed my marketing strategies. Even my supposed social awkwardness proved advantageous in the digital age, where meaningful online connections often outweighed traditional networking. As my 30th birthday approached, my business had evolved into a multifaceted media company with over 50 employees. We operated multiple websites, produced original content, hosted international writing conferences, and partnered with major publishing houses worldwide. Our educational division offered certified courses in digital content creation and marketing, attracting students from dozens of countries. The company's valuation reached $70 million, a figure that made headlines in business publications but still failed to impress my family. During Christmas dinner that year, as we sat around the elaborately decorated table, my father raised his glass for the traditional toast. "To family," he began, looking around the room. "To Thomas and his steady banking career, to Sarah and her successful law practice." He paused, glancing at me with a familiar twinkle of amusement in his eyes. "And to Emma, our resident bookworm, who continues to amuse us all with her creative pursuits." The room filled with polite chuckles, just as it had done for nearly 3 decades. I smiled graciously, raising my glass along with everyone else. But this time, something felt different. Perhaps it was the weight of accumulated success pressing against their persistent disbelief. Or maybe it was the realization that their opinions, once so hurtful, now felt almost charming in their stubborn refusal to change. "You know," I said softly, setting down my glass, "there's something quite poetic about building an empire while being underestimated." The statement hung in the air, met with confused smiles and nervous laughter. My mother patted my hand, probably thinking I was joking. Only Thomas narrowed his eyes slightly, perhaps sensing that something fundamental had shifted. The following weeks brought unprecedented challenges to my business. A major algorithm update from a dominant search engine threatened to reduce our organic traffic by nearly 60%. Several key team members announced their intention to leave for competitors. Simultaneously, a new tech startup emerged, aggressively targeting our market share with deep-pocketed investors backing their expansion. The perfect storm of obstacles arrived just as we were preparing to launch our most ambitious project yet, a global platform connecting writers with industry professionals. Instead of panicking, I retreated to my private office, a converted library wing of the Victorian house, and did what I had always done when faced with challenges. I read. Not novels this time, but case studies of companies that had successfully navigated similar crises. I devoured articles about digital transformation, studied data analytics reports, and revisited classic business texts with fresh eyes. Each book offered pieces of a solution, and I began seeing patterns that others might have missed in the chaos. I implemented changes that seemed counterintuitive to my management team. Rather than cutting costs, I increased investment in employee retention programs. Instead of fighting the algorithm change, I embraced it by restructuring our entire content strategy. The new tech competitor? I proposed a strategic partnership rather than engaging in costly competition. These decisions, informed by years of accumulated knowledge and careful analysis, baffled many industry experts who predicted our downfall. During this period of intense transformation, I found myself reflecting on the countless times my family had dismissed my reading habits as impractical or wasteful. How many times had they rolled their eyes when I spent hours poring over business books instead of socializing? Now, those very habits were proving invaluable. The crisis response strategies I implemented weren't born from conventional wisdom or business school teachings. They emerged from cross-disciplinary insights gleaned from diverse readings, military history, psychological studies, even ancient philosophy. As the weeks turned into months, the results became undeniable. Our traffic recovered and surpassed previous levels, thanks to innovative content approaches. Key team members reconsidered their resignations after experiencing the renewed company culture. The partnership with our supposed competitor created synergies that neither company could have achieved alone. Revenue projections showed growth exceeding even our most optimistic forecasts. Yet through it all, my family remained blissfully unaware of the magnitude of our success. At the height of this transformation, I received an invitation to speak at a prestigious business conference. The organizers wanted me to share insights about navigating digital disruption and maintaining growth during industry upheavals. Preparing for this presentation forced me to articulate exactly how my unconventional background had contributed to our success. I created slides showing direct correlations between literary analysis techniques and market trend interpretation, between narrative structure principles and effective marketing campaigns. The night before the conference, I found myself standing in my extensive home library, running my fingers along the spines of books that had shaped my journey. From childhood favorites to business classics, each volume represented a stepping stone in my evolution from mocked bookworm to industry innovator. I realized that my greatest strength hadn't been raw intelligence or natural business acumen, it had been the ability to learn continuously, to connect seemingly unrelated concepts, and to trust the process of intellectual exploration that my family had so often ridiculed. The morning of the conference, as I dressed in my carefully chosen professional attire, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come from those days of hiding in the library during school recess. The presentation I was about to deliver would showcase not just our company's achievements, but also demonstrate how the very traits my family had mocked, my insatiable curiosity, my love for learning, my faith in the power of books, had become the foundation of a thriving enterprise. Walking onto the conference stage, I surveyed the audience of industry leaders, investors, and journalists. Many had flown in from different continents to attend this event. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my family continued to view my reading habit as a quirky eccentricity, here I stood, about to explain how those same habits had built a business empire worth $70 million. The screen behind me displayed our company logo, but I chose to open with a different image, a photograph of my childhood self, sitting cross-legged on the library floor, surrounded by books. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach, "I want to tell you a story about the power of unconventional wisdom." You see, while many successful entrepreneurs credit their achievements to formal education or hands-on experience, my journey began in a place most wouldn't consider a breeding ground for business success, the children's section of our local public library. A murmur rippled through the audience as they studied the photograph. I detailed how each phase of my reading journey had contributed to our company's success. From children's literature teaching me about character development and narrative structure, crucial elements in branding and marketing, to business biographies providing blueprints for scaling operations. I explained how studying Shakespeare's complex characters had enhanced my understanding of consumer behavior, and how analyzing historical fiction had sharpened my ability to predict market trends based on social patterns. The audience listened intently as I described implementing strategies inspired by unlikely sources. How Sun Tzu's The Art of War informed our competitive positioning, how Tolstoy's insights into human nature guided our customer relationship management, and how principles from quantum physics textbooks helped us understand rapid technological changes in our industry. Each example drew gasps of surprise and nods of recognition from seasoned professionals, who suddenly saw familiar business concepts through a completely new lens. Midway through the presentation, I introduced a concept I called literary business intelligence, the practice of applying storytelling techniques and literary analysis to business decision-making. I showed concrete examples of how this approach had led to breakthrough innovations in our product development and marketing strategies. The room erupted in excited whispers as attendees recognized the potential applications in their own organizations. Perhaps the most powerful moment came when I shared data comparing our company's performance metrics against industry averages. Slide after slide demonstrated how our unique approach had consistently outperformed traditional methods. Growth rates, customer retention figures, innovation adoption speeds, all significantly higher than our competitors who relied solely on conventional business practices. As I concluded the presentation, I noticed several prominent investors and business leaders approaching the stage. Their body language spoke volumes, leaning forward in their seats, furiously taking notes, whispering excitedly to colleagues. The Q&A session that followed lasted twice as long as scheduled, with questions ranging from implementation details to potential collaboration opportunities. Major media outlets requested exclusive interviews, and several universities expressed interest in developing courses based on our methodologies. Backstage after the presentation, I found myself surrounded by executives from Fortune 500 companies, venture capitalists, and tech innovators, all eager to discuss potential partnerships and investments. One particularly influential tech CEO pulled me aside, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Your approach is revolutionary," he said, gripping my shoulder. "We've been trying to solve these exact problems using traditional methods for years. Your literary framework, it's genius in its simplicity and effectiveness." That evening, as I reviewed the day's events in my hotel suite, my phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. Industry publications were already publishing articles about the presentation, dubbing our methodology the reading revolution in business. Social media exploded with discussions about literary business intelligence, with thought leaders across various sectors weighing in on its potential applications. The business community had validated what I had known all along, that the lessons hidden within books could transform industries when applied with insight and innovation. What struck me most, however, wasn't the validation from industry peers or the sudden surge of media attention. It was the realization that my family's persistent mocking had inadvertently protected me from conventional thinking. Their constant dismissal had forced me to develop my own path, to trust my unique perspective when everyone else doubted its value. The very isolation they had imposed upon me had become the incubator for innovation. As I prepared to return home, I reflected on how this presentation marked a significant shift. No longer was I merely building a successful business, I was creating a movement that challenged traditional notions of business education and leadership development. The literary frameworks I had developed were proving to be universally applicable, transcending industry boundaries and cultural differences. Investors were already discussing scaling these methodologies globally, while academic institutions were proposing research partnerships to study their effectiveness systematically. The following weeks transformed into a whirlwind of opportunities and challenges. Major corporations sought to license our business methodologies, while universities competed to host visiting professorships focused on literary business intelligence. Venture capital firms proposed funding expansions into new markets, and technology partners offered cutting-edge tools to enhance our platform's capabilities. Each opportunity required careful consideration, as the decisions I made now would shape not just my company's future, but potentially influence how entire industries approached innovation and problem-solving. Amidst this professional revolution, I found myself revisiting the fundamental question that had driven me since childhood: what truly defines success? Was it the financial valuation of my company, the industry recognition I was receiving, or something deeper and more personal? The answer seemed to lie somewhere in the intersection of all these elements, in the realization that true achievement wasn't measured by external validation, but by the impact one creates and the legacy one leaves behind. Every morning, as I entered my office overlooking the city skyline, I passed the wall of books that had accompanied me throughout this journey. Each volume represented not just knowledge gained, but battles fought, prejudices overcome, and barriers broken. The mocking voices of my past had become faint echoes, replaced by the hum of possibility and progress. Yet instead of feeling triumphant, I felt a growing sense of responsibility, to continue pushing boundaries, to keep challenging conventional wisdom, and to prove that sometimes, the most powerful revolutions begin not with grand gestures, but with quiet moments spent between the pages of a book. Emma's journey reached its crescendo one crisp autumn afternoon, when she received an invitation that would tie together all the loose ends of her life. It was a letter from her alma mater, requesting her presence at their annual homecoming gala to deliver the keynote speech. The theme? Unconventional paths to success. For Emma, it felt like fate knocking on her door. The night of the gala arrived, and as she stepped into the grand ballroom adorned with twinkling lights and elegant decorations, she noticed something unusual. Her entire family, parents, siblings, cousins, even distant relatives, was seated in the front row. They had been invited by the university as special guests, unaware of who the keynote speaker would be. As Emma walked onto the stage, microphone in hand, she saw their faces shift from curiosity to shock. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady but warm. "When I was asked to speak tonight about unconventional paths to success, I thought immediately of my own journey, a journey that started right here in this very town, surrounded by people who often doubted me." She paused, looking directly at her family. "You see, growing up, I was known as the Bookworm. My love for reading wasn't just dismissed, it was mocked. But those books became my sanctuary, my teachers, and eventually, the foundation of everything I've built." As she spoke, she shared not only her professional achievements but also the personal struggles she faced along the way, the loneliness, the self-doubt, the moments when she questioned whether her dreams were worth pursuing. Yet through it all, she emphasized how every challenge had shaped her into the person she was today. "I didn't build a $70 million empire because I wanted to prove anyone wrong," she continued, her voice softening. "I did it because I believed in the power of knowledge, the magic of storytelling, and the idea that there is always more to learn. And while my family may not have understood my journey, they were part of it too, in ways they might not realize." Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. She then turned the conversation toward gratitude, thanking her parents for instilling in her a sense of discipline, her siblings for teaching her resilience, and her extended family for providing a community, even if it wasn't always supportive in the way she'd hoped. By the time she finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. But it was her family's reaction that mattered most. Her mother sat silently, tears streaming down her face, while her father clutched his program tightly, visibly moved. Thomas, once her harshest critic, looked at her with newfound admiration. After the applause died down, Emma stepped off the stage and was immediately enveloped in hugs, from strangers, colleagues, and finally her family. Her mother pulled her aside first. Emma, she whispered, choking back tears, we never meant to hurt you. We didn't understand. All these years, we thought we were encouraging you to live fully, but instead, we made you feel small. It's okay, Mom, Emma replied gently. You gave me something far more valuable than encouragement. You gave me determination. Every time someone laughed at me, it pushed me to work harder, think deeper, and dream bigger. Her father approached next, his usual stoic demeanor replaced by vulnerability. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Truly. You've accomplished things we couldn't even imagine. Please forgive us for being blind to your brilliance. For the first time in decades, Emma felt a profound sense of closure. Their apology didn't erase the pain of the past, but it healed a wound she hadn't realized was still open. That night, as they sat together sharing stories and laughter, Emma realized that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, it was about moving forward with love. In the months that followed, Emma's company continued to thrive. Literary business intelligence became a global phenomenon, adopted by Fortune 500 companies and taught in universities worldwide. She expanded her platform to include mentorship programs for young entrepreneurs, particularly those who felt misunderstood or underestimated. Her mission was clear: to show others that their unique perspectives could change the world. But perhaps the most beautiful transformation happened within her family. Her brother Thomas joined her advisory board, using his finance expertise to help scale the business responsibly. Her parents became some of her biggest cheerleaders, attending events and proudly telling anyone who would listen about their daughter's accomplishments. Even her extended family rallied around her, hosting fundraisers for literacy programs and volunteering at local libraries. One day, as Emma stood in her office overlooking the city, she received a package. Inside was a leather-bound journal, inscribed with a note from her mother, "For all the stories you've yet to write." Holding it in her hands, Emma smiled. This wasn't just a gift, it was a symbol of acceptance, understanding, and unconditional support. Years later, when Emma published her memoir, she dedicated it to her family. Not because they had always believed in her, but because their doubts had fueled her fire. In the final chapter, she wrote, "Success isn't about proving your critics wrong, it's about proving yourself right. When the world tells you that your passions are impractical, your dreams impossible, or your talents insignificant, remember this: the very thing that sets you apart can become your greatest strength. And sometimes, the people who doubted you the most can end up being your biggest champions."